Hey, good morning. Yes, it is. It is Saturday, May 18th, I believe. Sorry about yesterday. Uh, we do what you got to do, right? We all have our own problems and we all have to deal with it in our own way. So, see if we can get back on track today. So, today is going to be kind of Friday's episode of the weekend or the weekday. And it's called Following Directions. And what most of us do is fly by the seat of our pants, right? Well, stay tuned. This should be interesting. Alrighty then, so welcome back. My name is Eric, if you didn't already know it. And today we're going to do Friday's episode, yesterday, that I wasn't able to do. And that is following directions versus flying by the seat of your pants. Now let's see if this kind of is you, of where you get something in a box, right? And there's a set of instructions in there, and it's got all the parts. All you have to do is put it together. Now, if you're like me, you'll spread everything all out and you'll start putting it together. And then when you run into a hurdle, roadblock, what have you, of not sure how it goes, then you get the directions out. And you're three quarters or almost all the way done. And you got a handful of extra nuts and bolts, and you just assume maybe they shipped extra. But once you read the directions, you realize the main structure of the whole darn thing is a part that we put somewhere else, and it needed to be in this direction. So, wouldn't it be easier? I think it's a guy thing. I really do. Because most women that I know, you know, first thing they do is get the instructions out and they read the instructions. So, the smarter species is women because they'll put it together right the first time. Where us dumbasses will jump into it and then only then come back to the instructions if we can't figure it out. And that's a lot to do with life, and it's a lot to do with business. Of you have to have a plan of attack. Impulse in most of us is, we talk about time gets you experience, good and bad, and then it gets you wisdom, right? So when a customer brings in a weed trimmer and it starts but it bogs down, the first thing we do is we jump to what history has shown us, if we've had enough experience, and go right to that, right? Because you know what it is. But it may not be that. And if you bypass the steps that we talked about, then you're just kind of flying by the seat of your pants, all right? If a trimmer comes in, it starts, and it bogs down, has issues running, revving, it could be anything from a plug screen, a rusted screen. It could be bad fuel. It could be your high-speed jet is got some dirt in it or gunk in it. Your carburetor may have gunk in it. I mean, there's a lot of things that mimic that situation. But I've also seen trimmers that will start up that have under 90 pounds compression. But when you go to throttle up, it just doesn't have the PSI to pull that amount of volume of fuel in, right? So if we develop a plan of attack, have a procedure in place that no matter what, I'm not going to jump into putting something together without first looking at the directions. The directions are important, right? The reason they send them with you, with the stuff, is to tell you how to put it together. And that's what I talk about when I say, you know, having a procedure in place. And this doesn't have to just apply to small engine. It can be auto mechanics. It could be in HR. You could be the CEO of a company. But you need to have some kind of a procedure in place. And my assumption is if you're CEO, you must have worked your way up, hopefully through the ranks to gain wisdom to have that position. And you're not just somebody that so and so knows so and they put you in that position, because that's the quickest way to have a demise of a company is somebody that has no clue what they're doing. Fake it till you make it. And I've seen that with a lot of college graduates get picked for those positions versus somebody that's worked for the company for 30 years because they weren't educated enough. Education is not just a diploma or a college degree. Education is the wisdom that you've learned over time working in that field, right? And those are the people that you want running it if you want longevity, long term, because they're not looking for the short gain. They're looking at how to better position that repair shop, that, company, organization, what have you. No matter what you do in life, you need to sit down first and think about a plan of attack. And it may not work, your first plan of attack. But at least you sat down and you tried thinking it through, right? But I want you to go back to, the baby crib that came in the mail from Amazon with a directions of just stopping before you open the box. First pull out the bag of bolts and nuts and stuff with the directions in it and take 10 minutes to read the directions. And if that means laying the directions out in front of you as you're doing it, do it. It will save you time and money and headaches. Because if you take the couple pieces that were structural, and you end up with extra nuts and bolts that you were supposed to have used, is it safe for the baby? No, the thing could collapse. And that's kind of what it is when it comes to business is, if you try to shortcut it and not do it the way it should be done, you may luck out and squeak by. But normally in that case, something else is going to fail. If you know what I mean. If you want longevity, you need to have a procedure. And I related it a lot to, the small engine repair shop, that our procedure there is if a unit comes in and I don't care what kind of shape it's in. Doesn't matter. Customer can tell me it's been running great. It just needs a service. I don't take their word for it. Because if you've been in business long enough, as small engine repair, you have customers tell you that. And it's a piece of crap. I mean, that rototiller last week, prime example. The guy said that it ran good, but it had been sitting for a year. No, it hadn't. That thing hadn't been started in a long time. And whoever had it smoked it. Now, if I had gone by what the customer told me and said, okay, so if it ran last year, you just need a service, I'd go ahead and do a service on it, right? And then come back and then try to start it and have problems trying to start it. After all that's done, I put a new plug in it. That doesn't help. Finally, after you spent a couple hours and invested money into materials, oil, and what have you, the end result is what you would have got if you'd had the procedure of checking the compression in the first place. Claude even gets on me sometimes about why do we have to check compression on everything? If it runs, it runs. Well, I like to know what the compression is. I like to know if it's on its last leg, or is it a good machine that we're going to see year after year. But the end result is still, I had no compression. But with having a procedure in place, I checked the compression first before I did anything else. And once I hit compression and it had no compression, I approached the valves thinking, well, maybe I can get the valves adjusted, to get it to come up. And it's similar to the Predator engines that we see. So we tried adjusting, we tried adjusting the valves. Not so much by clearance, you got to get that close. But I'll tell you, the Predator engines, the specs on them, you can't go by. You have to have a compression tester hooked up and just keep tweaking to see if you bring up that dial. And we lucked out on the old guys, 2 pieces of equipment. The sump pump thing and the little pocket generator. But with the Rototiller, no matter what we did, zilch. We just could not get it to come up. And that's one of the hardest things you have to do at the repair shop, is have to tell a customer, I'm sorry, it's not worth fixing. I advised him that we could step out and buy a Predator motor for about $150. It'd be like a 7.5 horse. We just got to make sure shaft size. We can adjust that anyways, because with use of Lovejoys and the rubber piece in the middle for flexibility, you can make it work. And you could have had a tiller for, probably talking $100.50 for that, and then about $100.50 for labor. He'd have another $300 in it. And the way he was looking at it, well, that means I'll have $600 in it, and I could buy a brand new one for $700. Well, you've already lost your $300, so now you're going to have to go out and spend $700 to get a new one. So now you got $1,000 in there. So $600 is still cheaper than $1,000, right? But that's assuming that everything else works on it. The gearbox is good. The controls are good. All that stuff is good. Because we have no way of knowing that without putting a replacement engine on there and finding out. In the end, he gave it to us. And if I get a free minute, I am going to pick up a Predator engine and put it on that and see if I can't make everything work, and then offer it to him for what I've got into it and see if he goes with it. Procedure. You need to have a procedure in place. But as I was saying, it's everything in life. Whether it's you want to go on a vacation for a week, the things you want to look at is hotel, places you're going to stay, picking up the one that you want with the right view. It's whether you're going to fly or drive and waypoints along the way. Are you going to drive 27 hours straight, or are you going to stop halfway and get rested for the night and then finish the journey the following day? Yes, you can do it by the seat of your pants, all right? You can just grab, a road map, or today we all have GPS in our vehicles, and we can just punch in the end result of where we want to be, and it will plot a course for us. So we just follow their course. And if you ever do GPS, you don't always get the right and the best way. I'll tell you that much right now. But you have to have a plan in place. And you don't want to go on vacation and then have to come home and rest up from the vacation, right? Because you stressed the whole vacation. Because you didn't plan. So whether you're putting that unit together that you just came in from Amazon or eBay, or you're running a repair shop, running a business, being an employee of a business, but in charge of a certain department, you have to have procedures on how you're going to do it. And I know when I was younger, I always fought the system. I was always looking for a quicker and better way, right? And the old timers would say, we've tried that. It doesn't work. This is why we have this procedure in place, Eric. And I'm like, yeah, but, and no, yeah, but. This is the way we want it done. If you can show us a quicker, easier, less expensive way of doing it and getting the same end result, because you have to calculate it in time, money, end results. If you can do that, most companies will accept it. But a lot of times you're going to fight some headwinds with that because the old timers are following a procedure and they don't want to change the procedure because it's worked well for them. It's taken quite a while for them to develop that procedure, having trial and error. But what they didn't have that we have now is technology. And if you're willing to adapt to technology, then there are quicker and easier ways if done correctly. But it all still takes a planning stage and developing a set of procedures. That's what I did a lot when I worked in the mill, as far as learning other ways of doing things. And when I was the operator, they wanted at least a 92 to a 95% recovery rate. And that's when it comes in as raw, it gets crushed by the outside crusher, and then it comes in and gets crushed by the inside cone crusher, which you can set how big a particle it can go down through. And that's coming up the belts, going into the rod mill and getting crushed more, into the ball mill and having it beat by a bunch of metal balls to get it pulverized to almost dust. And you have to have ways using chemicals to extract as much zinc as possible. And the way the system was set up was we pulled the lead off because the lead was kind of a pain in the backside, let's say. And lead was, what's the right word for it? It was a byproduct in the process, but it also made the company money because they could sell the lead. It was kind of a purplish color. But the chemicals we wanted to use to bring the zinc to the surface to get washed over, instead of washed out the tailings, it's where it goes out to get rid of whatever we don't use. You have to extract the lead first by using a certain chemical. It causes it to rise to the surface. It will attach to the lead particles, bring to the surface in a froth, and then boil over, and then get put into a big cylinder container that holds thousands and thousands of gallons. And then about every 3 to 4 months, we would take and run that lead in through a dryer system to a set of bags and then out to the railroad cars for loading. But once I started tweaking the system, once we got the lead out, right? And that means you have to have a good assistant operator because that assistant operator, it needs to know how to pull as much of that lead off as possible. I end up tweaking the chemical mix with the zinc so that I was running 97, 98% recovery on average. So then the corporate wanted to know what I was doing because you had a number of different operators. And the bench was 92, 95. They thought that was the best you could do. But now they're seeing 97, 98 recovery on my shift. And it's a team effort. It wasn't just me. It was a team effort of everybody who was on my crew doing what we were doing. enough so that corporate, a lot of the big shots came up, wanted to see us run and look at the printout sheets to see what we were actually getting, see if it was true. If you can change something to get a better result, that's wisdom, right? But if you fly by the seat of your pants, you may have a recovery rate of 30, 35, and you won't be in that position very long. So on that note, you guys have a great Saturday. Again, apologize for yesterday. Thanks for the thoughts and prayers. And you and I are no different. We all have our problems, and we deal with them the best we can and go forward, right? Happy Saturday. All right, guys.